We start by seeing Kora, who is finishing her shopping for the weekend, already preparing for the big storm predicted in the quiet community of Shelter Island. Inside the car, her dog Charlie can't stop barking at some trees in the alley. Helping Kora with the bags, Donald comments that she is bringing enough food for more than a month and reminds her that the storm shouldn't last more than a few days. Laughing at her own exaggeration, Kora explains that her 3 nieces are on their way. The news worries Donald because, although brief, the storm promises to be violent. Additionally, tomorrow is Halloween and maybe the girls should wait a little longer. Without going into detail, Kora explains that the nieces are moving in and have nowhere to go. Charlie is already growling loudly when Kora gets into the car, and she notices the dog's aggressive behavior. Donald looks at the sky, worried, and sees that the neighboring stores are already closing. Lightning starts as Kora is still driving home. The road cuts through a dense forest and there are no other cars nearby. Charlie starts to struggle in the back seat and she is forced to stop. The dog then seizes the chance to jump out the window and simply runs off into the trees. Stunned, Kora leaves the car and starts to follow Charlie, trying to navigate by his barks. It becomes increasingly difficult to hear the dog as the thunder approaches. At this moment, a circle of sparks begins to form at the base of a tree. Kora has no time to flee when the embers shoot in her direction and she ends up being captured. When Kora drags herself back to the car, it is evident that something terrible has happened to her. Then we meet the 3 orphans who are on their way to Shelter Island. Emma is the fragile youngest, plagued by constant nightmares. Marley is the rebel who is unhappy about moving to their aunt's house, and Sarah is left with the role of adult in the trio. The money inherited from their parents barely covered Emma's medical expenses, leaving the sisters without a place to live. Bored on the trip, Emma draws a pair of eyes on the foggy glass, but becomes scared of her own art and quickly wipes it away. Arriving at the ferry to Shelter Island, there is no one in sight and the gate is closed. Sarah says there was a crossing scheduled for this time, but Marley hopes she is wrong and they have to turn back. An employee appears at the window, explaining that a very strong storm is coming and the service will be suspended until the weather improves. If they take this ferry, they won't be able to leave for several days, which he considers a terrible idea, especially at this time of year. Sarah makes it clear that his opinion will not change her plans. Seeing that another car is stopping in line, the employee gives up offering his advice. Curious to see who the other traveler is, Marley turns around and realizes that Emma has disappeared. One of the back doors is open, but they didn't notice when their sister went out. Sarah asks the ferry employee if he saw where she went. He says he didn't see a third person in the car at any time. Very anxious, Sarah and Marley start to search the underbrush around, calling out the name of their sister. The driver of the car behind is a guy named Seth, and he goes after Sarah to warn her that he saw Emma near the ferry. He also tries to convince her not to go to the island, recounting that there were dozens of fatalities the last time a storm hit the area during Halloween. A bit annoyed with so much advice, Sarah asks why Seth is going to the island today if it's so dangerous. The guy replies that he has his reasons, and she gives him the same answer. Marley finds Emma crying alone and asks what's wrong. The girl says something bad happened to Aunt Kora. Her sister says that the aunt is fine and spoke to her that morning. Emma is not convinced, as she saw the whole tragedy in a dream. Sarah catches up to the two and asks what's going on, but to her, Emma gives a vague answer, as if she knows her sister wouldn't take her words seriously. Marley tells Sarah that the youngest's nightmares are getting worse. The girl has been living in hell since she survived the car accident that claimed their parents' lives. Already very late, the sisters finally return to the car and board the ferry. Before doing the same, Seth checks how many bullets he has left in his revolver. From afar, Shelter Island really seems like a very scary place. The 2 lonely cars complete the crossing and someone peeks through the window of a diner as the sisters pass through the main avenue. Sarah is surprised to see the town deserted and Marley says that their aunt isn't answering the calls. She also worries about Emma's excessive sleepiness, but Sarah says it's just the medication causing drowsiness. Then Marley notices the person peeking through the window and gets scared, asking her sister to get them out of there. Seth also passes through the main avenue shortly afterward, as if he is following the girls. On the road to Kora's house, Marley starts to question the way and Sarah admits that she is lost. To make matters worse, their cell phones have no signal and there's no way to consult the GPS. The two start to argue until Emma interrupts with bad news, pointing to the car's dashboard, which shows that the fuel tank is almost empty. Mixed with the thunder, sinister noises begin to come from the forest and they decide to continue down this path, just to avoid being stuck there. It doesn't take long for the gasoline to run out. Trying to keep calm, Sarah assures them that their aunt lives at the end of this road and says they need to walk the rest of the way. The chilling lines start again when Sarah is taking the luggage out of the trunk, and Marley says they can go back to get it later. Sarah wants to at least take Emma's medication, but she can't find it, so she gives up. The three start running and Emma trips, hurting her foot. She continues walking with the help of her sisters until they reach their aunt's address. It is then that they see her car abandoned on the road and full of signs of a struggle. Sarah tells Marley to take Emma inside while she checks it out. Emma starts shouting, asking her sister not to approach, as the scene is the same as in her dream. Sarah ignores her, but is also very scared. Arriving at the car, she gathers the courage to open the door and is horrified by what she sees. Expelling embers from the two holes where her eyes should be, Kora barely has the strength for a last breath. Sarah starts screaming and then runs into a woman named Stacy, who also seems to have been attacked, and tells Sarah that the thing has already arrived. In the forest, we see that something evil is taking form as the lightning begins to strike the trees. The creature is made of twisted branches and its interior is filled with fire. Sarah still hasn't gotten home and the phones aren't working. Marley left Emma in the basement, saying it is not safe to go out of there. The girl asks about Sarah, and Marley tries to hide her worry. Suddenly, the door of the house swings open. Marley approaches cautiously and is startled by the arrival of Stacy, but then sees that her sister is with her. Sarah didn't understand the prophetic message and says that a maniac is attacking the residents of the island. She also tells her sister that they lost their aunt. In the basement lit by candles, Marley boards up the windows, believing the boards will keep the danger outside. Under Sarah's care, Stacy comes to her senses and again tries to alert the newcomers. Saying that she herself didn't usually believe it, the woman swears that a great horror has befallen the island and won't relent until Halloween is over. Exhausted from the effort, Stacy passes out again before explaining what needs to be done. Frightened by the conversation, Marley demands to know what happened to their aunt, and Sarah ends up revealing the twisted details. When Marley mentions Emma's dream and says that she predicted the disaster, Sarah maintains her skeptical stance and claims it can only be a coincidence. On Halloween morning, Marley warns her sister that the guest is getting worse. Sarah knows that Stacy needs to be taken to a hospital, but they cannot leave the house without a plan while there is a predator on the loose. They decide to solve the fuel issue first, transferring the gasoline from Kora's car to the gas can. Getting close to the vehicle, Sarah recommends that Marley not look at their aunt so she won't get traumatized. It soon becomes clear that the two can't do anything together without fighting. When Sarah comments on what Seth told her about the last Halloween storm, the other girl bursts with anger and insinuates that the boy himself must be responsible for all this. They start shouting at each other and Sarah pushes Marley, who falls right at the driver's door. What's left of their aunt slips to the side and right before their eyes, completing the worst possible trauma. Only then do the two notice that their car has disappeared. Emma won't be able to walk all that way with her injured leg, and Stacy can't wait much longer. As unpleasant as it is, the only solution is to remove Kora to use her car. After that, Emma wakes up calling for her sisters and Marley goes to attend to her while Sarah tries to get the car out of the ditch. The girl is on the front steps, scared to have woken up alone. Marley tells her it's not safe out there and orders her to come in, but barely finishes speaking when Stacy's body is thrown from inside the house, smashing through the front door. Her lifeless hand grabs Emma, and a kind of branch starts to grow from the body, covering the girl's leg as well. Marley pulls her sister with all her strength but can't free her, so she decides to separate her from Stacy with a hatchet. Sarah manages to unstick the car just in time, and her sisters get in as quickly as possible. Stacy is already completely covered in branches that seem to have a life of their own, and the fire monster rises right above her. Emma is crying in the back seat of the car, convinced that her nightmares are the cause of all this and that a nefarious fate awaits everyone around her. On the main avenue, Sarah collides with something and gets out to check. By the state of the victim, it's evident that the runover was the least of their problems. More and more scared, Marley convinces Sarah to seek help in the area of the ferry, but when they return to the car, they realize that Emma isn't there. She left a note written on the glass, asking the two to stay away from her. Sarah and Marley split up to look for her and find several other victims of the evil haunting the island. The only intact person there is Seth, who greets Sarah with a lot of distrust and tells her to be quiet. Marley enters a store, calling for Emma and trying to see in the dark. Donald appears out of nowhere and the girl is in shock upon seeing the evil tree behind him. She witnesses the attack firsthand and ends up trapped under the body, while the entity seems to dissipate into the air. Managing to free herself, she doesn't see that the embers have taken a different route and are flowing out through the drain. The creature materializes under a parked car and grabs Marley's leg, who screams in despair as the monster advances over her. The girl barely escapes because a guy named Toby arrives shooting and helps her to get up and leave. Hidden in the store, Emma gives up on leaving when she sees the monster recovering, but it has already set its sights on her. Sarah is gagged on the floor of the diner when Toby brings her sister in as well. Promising silence, Marley is permitted to untie her. Besides Toby and Seth, Nicole and Alex are also there. The four hid in the freezer when the tragedy started and ended up saving themselves. Seth is a virtual celebrity who sleeps in haunted places and documents the experience for his fans. He says he has never encountered anything that was truly supernatural until now. A few weeks ago, a drunk told him about the cursed island where 6 witches escaped the stake a long time ago. On the night of the trial, a storm swept through the island and the witches were taken by lightning, allowing them to return stronger and ready for revenge. According to legend, the island's population is decimated every time the fateful night marks another century. Terrified, the sisters want to go out to look for Emma, but Toby stops them, as his plan is to stay hidden until sunrise. Interrupting the argument, Alex says that the thing doesn't destroy all its victims right away. By the marks on the ground, he deduced that some people were dragged, all in the same direction. An example of this is his girlfriend, Jill, who also tried to enter the freezer, but Toby wouldn't let her. She wasn't among the victims when they left, and Alex believes she might still be alive. In the middle of the discussion, a woman starts screaming in the parking lot and Alex wants to go out to try to save her. From the window, the sisters see that the creature is using the victim as bait. Marley criticizes Seth's behavior, who is filming the attack to post the video later. He drops the phone, making a lot of noise, and soon after the woman is consumed by flames as if the monster had already gotten what it wanted. Alex returns inside and everyone tries to stay quiet until Toby warns that he is going back to the freezer and that once he closes the door, no one else can enter. Seth is the only one who decides to join him, while everyone else prefers to try finding the kidnapped survivors. Alex warns that the ammunition is running low and Nicole says the police station isn't far. To ensure that the others get there safely, Marley says she will distract the creature and runs out before Sarah can stop her. Inside the freezer, Seth and Toby keep their eyes on the door, prepared to defend themselves. Seth begins to feel guilty, thinking it would have been better to go with the others. As the two argue, small embers begin to infiltrate the environment. Toby says that the only survivor he cares about is himself. When Seth turns to reply, the creature has already fully formed behind Toby. The latter suffers the first attack and doesn't survive, and so Seth, trying to escape the freezer, is pulled back inside to meet his end. Meanwhile, Marley is setting fire to a random car, and this action causes an explosion. As no noise can compete with that, the others take the opportunity to invade the police station. Sarah tries to call for help on the police radio while the other two search for weapons. Nicole gets startled by the remains of a police officer and lets out a scream. Hoping that the monster didn't hear, the trio divides up the acquired arsenal and starts studying the map, trying to figure out where the hostages were taken. The clues point to an abandoned power plant in the middle of the forest. When Nicole leans on the map to show where it is, her finger gets scorched. The paper catches fire quickly and the creature's arm bursts through the wall, grabbing Alex's head. After finishing him off, the monster circles around, but the two girls are already ready and start shooting. The shots do not cause any permanent damage but help buy time while the thing recovers. Sarah checks that Alex is really gone and then hears Nicole's screams. She ends up leaving the police station as the only survivor of the expedition, and Marley is waiting for her in their aunt's car. She says she was looking for Emma and only found her bracelet. Hoping to find her sister among the other survivors, Sarah explains the way to the power plant. Arriving nearby, both girls exit the car and start crossing the forest until they find a circular clearing. Marley says that this must have been the place where the witches were judged. Examining one of the stakes more closely, she gets scared when a hand emerges from the ground and grabs her arm. But then the sisters realize that it is one of the survivors. The girl is very shaken and pleads for them to be quiet, but they keep shouting their sister's name and knocking everything around the stakes until Marley finally finds Emma. As they free the branches that are trapping the girl, another hostage begins to scream and is dragged away right after. Then the cursed tree appears again and Sarah decides to confront it, getting thrown away at the same time. Emma is still not fully awake and Marley struggles to get her out of there. Upon finding a trapdoor, she sits the girl on the floor, and while she tries to break the lock, someone suddenly appears right beside her, but after the fright, she is glad to see it's her sister Sarah. More screams are already heard throughout the forest, and the three hurry down the stairs, closing the lid behind them. It is completely dark down there and Marley lights the lighter to see better. Emma says she is scared, but Sarah reassures her that they will be safe inside, as long as they stick together. The girl doesn't even have time to respond before her sister is pulled by an invisible force and stuck to the wall. The creature is on the other side, trying to suck Sarah until Marley manages to free her. The three begin to run, trying to find a hiding spot where the thing can't get in, but that seems increasingly impossible. Sarah says they will find a way to escape, but Emma cries and says no. She saw everything in a dream and knows they won't make it out alive. Sensing another attack, Sarah simply tells her she loves her sisters before running toward the light and starting to scream at the monster, luring it toward herself. Emma is crying loudly and the creature hesitates for a moment, but ends up following Sarah into the back of a compartment. When the enemy approaches, the girl quickly dodges the attack as if she were about to flee, but instead of pulling away, she locks the door and traps herself with the creature. Marley is still trying to protect Emma at all costs, but the girl wriggles free and runs to save her sister. It is too late when she manages to unlock the door. Sarah has already been consumed and the creature is stretching through her. Marley tells Emma to hide and not come out until dawn. Then she lights the lighter and begins to provoke the monster to lure it in her direction. Upon reaching the trapdoor, she hears Emma screaming and realizes the thing is no longer there. She goes down again and taunts the enemy until she gets its attention back, and as soon as she does, she runs outside. Marley no longer expects to survive this hellish day, but she is still determined to take the culprit down with her. As soon as the monster emerges from the underground, she aims right at its mouth and drives a long metal pipe into it, immediately attracting a lightning strike. Hours later, Emma emerges from the trapdoor and sees her sister lying down. She shakes Marley until she regains consciousness and says that the sun is about to rise. Marley is in bad shape and asks her to go get help. As soon as Emma exits, a sound of crackling leaves begins to worry Marley. Looking up, she is filled with dread upon seeing the monster completely recovered and about to attack her. Then her worst fear comes true when she hears Emma's voice challenging the creature. Marley pleads for her to go away, but the girl refuses to abandon her. Finally, the first ray of sunlight hits the forest, shattering the eerie tree into thousands of embers, as it could not have contact with sunlight. Emma helps her sister to get up, and the two begin to walk home, supporting each other.